Um, all right. This is our session for review for the exam. Anything and everything that we've talked about or covered in the readings is legitimate to talk about now. So please, please give us questions, comments of any sort, and we will do the best to respond. Review questions.
Professor, could I ask what the structure of this midterm is?
Yes, good question. Everybody has that in mind. It's maybe we haven't mentioned that. We normally have maybe 6, for example, terms and ask you to write some identification comments about, say, 4 of the 6 or something like that. So you get a little bit of choice, but you should be able to identify some key concepts. Hint, these are often on the syllabus, not that complicated. Look at the syllabus and a reminder of some of the biggest concepts which are in the readings. And then similarly, the big handouts or things that I've held up with key sort of pages and points. So part 1 is IDs. Part 2 is an essay, maybe write an essay on one of 2 topics that we suggest writing an essay about. And usually these are fairly general in giving you a fair amount of choice to structure it in a way that you're comfortable with. We don't try to trick you with anything. It's generally straightforward and leaving you a fair amount of autonomy to see if you want to include jokes or a critique of this or that as you so choose. As when I say critique, we have tried to stress in the course the positive social science, positive only in the sense of being description and analytical, in contrast to what the economists discuss, for instance, as explicitly a normative theory. A normative theory is like, say, a perfect market. And so they'll say if we have complete freedom, complete information, we have freedom of entry, we have these assumptions about how perfect competition works, then we have a perfect market. And the price should be this if we meet those assumptions. So when they say it should be, that's a normative statement in contrast to a positive statement. So we sometimes have tried to, our analog in a sense, you could say, is if we say, here is a Democrat and a Republican way of answering that question, we then try to match up with the main statements of either contemporary presidential candidates or some other meaning of Republican and Democrat, or talk about more traditional meanings of left and right, for instance, which have changed in more recent years, adding social issues. So the environment, women, gender preferences, human rights, these have become major social issues in some countries and with some political parties. I will use the word trump the economic issues. And President Trump has been adept at combining in this what's been called issue specificity in discussing 5 different answers to a possible question and therefore potentially contradicting yourself even in one Twitter posting by responding to one issue in one way, which may appeal to one audience or to one normative perspective, but being disliked by others who may follow another normative perspective. Okay.
I have another logistical question,
Please.
which is just, will the exam be timed?
Yes, it will be the same time as the class, and it will be sent out via email to all of you in the class, either directly from a list of names, which we have from Canvas, or via Canvas to get to each of you. The simplest is just to use the Canvas list. So if there's a problem with your listing on Canvas, maybe check that if you're planning to take the exam, and let's get it corrected however is necessary. We haven't heard of, I don't recall any problems like that. There are problems of, say, if you haven't registered through the registrar, then your name might not be there, but I haven't heard of anybody having an incorrect email address, but maybe check just to be sure. You should have gotten a couple of announcements through the Canvas email list. And if you have not gotten anything like that, then maybe there's a problem. Some people who registered late also have had problems. I shouldn't say late, it's your choice to register anytime you want, change around and so forth. So the registrar may have a late fee after a certain period, but if you register for one course, drop that course and substitute a new course, that sometimes confuses the registrar's listings and they may not work properly on Canvas. That's a common problem. So maybe check if everything is working for you on Canvas, and if it is, then we're all set. Anything else on legit? So the exam is submitted to you in that way at the beginning of class time, and then you must send it back at the end of class time. We haven't yet got a firm procedure on how to send it back, but that will be sent out. We'll try to send something out, not just at the time of the exam. That is, it can be either to the 3 of us with our emails. That's one way we've done it. Another way we've done it is to have you send it back to the Canvas program. But I would say if you get stuck or something gets confused, if something seems not to be working, don't get upset. If all else fails, send us an email with the time, which will be time stamped on the email that you send to us, and say, I can't get my machine to work. I'm using my roommate's computer. It's 7 minutes late now, as it will be time stamped, but I'm sending in the exam because my computer just exploded and is now on fire, and I'm using the fire hose. Okay. Anything else on logistics like that? One thing, several things I have covered very briefly. As you know, I've had one sentence on sometimes some pretty big topics, and that's to try to sort of flag it, but obviously not to give you enough information to write a proper exam reply at all. So anything that I've just covered that way briefly and you'd like me to elaborate would be fine to talk about. I'm thinking myself as I look over the syllabus as well of things that is the other thing we're doing with, since we've been using Canvas with the COVID virus, is we're using more videos, trying to have a little more discussion or try to have more faces, but it also means that I'm saying less in my presentations of the materials than I would have otherwise if we didn't have those. So we're trying to give you alternative perspectives with videos and having other people talking. But if you don't have a coherent, that is, think through, look at the key concepts, maybe try to jot them down as you read, think about some questions as you read, and then how would you answer? What are the main concepts in this chapter, this page, this book? And we have, each of us has office hours as well. We'll stay a little bit today after class if there's something. Can the two of you, our teaching assistants, please remind us if you have office hours in another day or so that someone could contact you in that time, most obviously.
So I have office hours after class on Mondays, but I am happy to take office hours by request should you reach out. My number and my email are both on the syllabus, so I should be easy to find.
Good. So the contact emails and telephones are on the syllabus.
Yeah, so my office hours are Wednesdays 3 to 4 p.m. So I actually just had them. But again, I'm happy to meet people by appointment. So just email me or reach out on a discussion board if you have a question.
Okay, great. Thank you, folks. Let me say that in this session today, if we don't have many people, we'll see if people start flooding in with questions, but if not, the two TAs are welcome to submit, to discuss with me right now. If you have things you'd like me to talk about that you sense could use a little elaboration on, I'm glad to do so. Let me pause for 30 seconds more just to see if someone. Let me comment on one question or one type of question that a couple of you have asked, something like, how important, or is this the main cause? Or I shouldn't, that's giving my answer away. Is this the cause? The cause is the fact that a city has an Irish mayor the cause of it doing this policy? Okay, what's wrong with that question in terms of what you've seen me say? And I'm looking over here to the introductory lecture, and I will hold it up on the screen to give you a hint as to how you might answer my question right here.
There's always going to be multiple causes.
Exactly. That life in general is complicated. And in this course, we say in two different cities, City 1 and City 2, the answers may be different. And even if it's hard to get, and you see the little a, little b, little c, those are coefficients which show how important, how relatively important is big A, big B, big C in explaining why. And the point of this is to say the answers may differ from city to city. Now, how do we know that? How can we measure that or capture that in some way? The two basic answers are in more qualitative case study, historical manner. It's more often a question of judgment. And so you can try to say, you know, I've been studying Chicago I've been doing an oral history of Chicago since Harold Washington was elected. That's a long time, about 30 plus years. I still have a hard time answering how important is X in explaining for instance, I was at a faculty discussion yesterday. How important are the arts in Chicago? And it seems to me they're hugely important. I've talked to a number of faculty who say, oh no, the arts are not important. In any city, especially Chicago. Okay, so my answer, I guess my more general answer is to follow up, try to think of a way of discussing with a skeptic or someone who has a different perspective. Maybe start with the idea that it's not a question of are the arts important, or is a market important, or is leadership important? Probably they're all important, but the question is how much, in what kind of issue area, in what kind of city, in what kind of context. So if someone says, how big is the fine for not paying your taxes on time, I wouldn't necessarily look at the lyrics of this rap song. So the size of a fee for taxation is a different question than, you know, what makes you want to move to the city of Chicago or change your neighborhood or something else. So depending on the question, the answer will be different. But the more general point that illustrates is the right answer for one city in a particular issue area is going to be sometimes very different from another issue area. And I illustrated that by saying, for example, we may have a Mexican-American woman, law school graduate, attorney, who is also an evangelical Christian, who also is an environmentalist, who also is a feminist, and yet we ask her who she's going to vote for, and I won't say who she's going to vote for, except to make the point that the logic of different issue areas, the logic of from an individual standpoint, the logic of your identity in primordial statuses like gender or Mexican-American nationality is different from your position, say, in those things which are more chosen by you. So you can choose to be a feminist, whether you're a male or a female or old or young or whatever, but you can't necessarily normally in most cities choose to be a woman. Now, the city of San Francisco says, you know, one of our human rights egalitarian benefits is that the city government it's a city county government will pay for you to have a gender change if you want it. And so they're trying to say if we don't have a free gender change offered